Aloha. Today I wanted to share some perspective on the possibilities of how I'm seeing what might transpire upon the whole flat earth unveilment or next steps or whatever, based upon what I've covered or in the past, or what I've been seeing as far as possible movement for the collective as a whole, and in relation to flat earth, the Mandela effect, CERN, and all the other systems that are out there that are part of this awakening or control grid, or however perspective you want to see it. I'm seeing it as all one big storyline, and whatever it is the control grid or the so-called powers that be attempt to do will be on a linear format, on a linear style of approach towards a group or a collective field. So it won't be anything that we won't be able to see right offhand as being as obvious as can be, because in this box world, this grid construct, there are so many other things that they have done in the past that have been the same storyline, the same kind of the same style system of approach, that we're easily unraveling it. So basically, it's up to us to figure out what it is that we as a whole are wanting to do in order to make the right next steps, instead of putting ourselves out there as like, oh, well, whatever they do, because that's basically what's going on. Even with the flat earth community right now, the flat earth community is waiting on the so-called powers that be. Even if they address them as the so-called powers that be, they're giving them that power by waiting on them to make their move. When if you are expanding yourself outside of the level of consciousness that created this control grid social construct in the first place, then you won't have to wait on an external power grid to make your move for you. It's up to you to find your own grid, your own moves outside of that space completely. So what does that whole system entail, and where are we starting from? Where did this stuff come from, and where are we going? So if we are looking to make moves, or actually understand what has led up to today, and what has led up to the whole energy crisis of consciousness that we are in with right now. It's not only about flat earth, it's not only about politics, it's not only about the government and all this stuff. It's all of this at the same time. And where are the biggest bleeds? Like where is, like, if you are approaching a like an injured soldier on the battlefield, and like there's a system that, like a combat lifesaver or a medic would approach them, you would look for like bleeding, breathing, shock, just like there. I can't remember exactly the whole format, but I know it was like bleeding and breathing were the first two, and you have to stop the bleeds. You have to stop. Well, you have to first help the stop the bleeding, stop the breathing, or help the bleeding, stop the bleeding, and then check for shock, and then check for fractures, check for burns, checks for all this stuff. But there's a definite order in the approach to what, who and what's going on here. So like, if you're already waiting on a system, an external system, the control grid to make your move for you, then you are already, you're letting those bleeds, you're letting those systems, it's just, it's not the way to approach the situation. It's powerless, it's hopeless, it's empty, and there's nothing there to that exists outside the level of consciousness that created this whole system in the first place. It's more of the same, and that's what this whole grid is doing to us, and that is continuing to do by existing the way it exists and creating the space of, the next moves for us. So this is how I'm seeing the next moves. They're going to go into the consciousness, or at least try to sell consciousness, try to package it up in like this nice little this pretty little package with a bow on it, and sell it with these individuals who have already been primed for you to trust. Like they got Rosario Dawson out there with Bernie Sanders going to jail, like, oh, she's doing it, like she's helping out. You got Hermione Granger at the United Nations talking about gender equality. You got Leonardo DiCaprio at the United Nations talking about a messenger for peace. You got all these people in movies talking about this and that. Robert De Niro talking about vaccines now. So they have to implode all the systems that are broken, but they're only imploding those systems that are broken so they can revamp the systems that they want to sell in next. They don't want to address the biggest bleeds and the choking of the people of this planet. They don't want to go back to the original storyline of this planet, and the flat earth realization is how far we have to go, no less than to really get into the nuts and bolts of how far this stuff has already gone. This goes from the indigenous peoples of no less than 1492 to the Zoot Suit riots in the 40s during World War II, when and some people don't realize like this stuff, like Mexican people are indigenous people. Like Mexican people are indigenous people to California, LA, Oakland, like all this, like it went all the way up. Like Mexico owned pretty much like all of this even Arizona. Arizona as a Republican state, that was Mexico. So the focus of something like a Donald Trump going out there talking about we gotta build a wall is a total bluff. It's a total energetic bluff. It's to have you focusing on a bluff of energy that is to set up a structure of power, which is the same power that is controlling the moves of consciousness, or the lack of moves of consciousness, the lack of moves of people who are in these focus groups, who are talking about the government, who are talking about politics, who are talking about conspiracies, who are talking about the flat earth, who are talking about the Mandela effect, and everybody has been compartmentalized, and that is the divide and conquer structure, and the sending out of that frequency is the news. Like it's literally telling you what is new, like it's the new, what is the news. So the news is already old, like it's already old, and it's selling an agenda. But this is what, when we refer to the so-called powers that be, this is who we are talking about. We are talking about this information stream, the news, the BBC, Fox, CNN, all this information which is a magic spell. It's a magic spell to keep this this information, this connection to the beyond locked down in a dormant state of being. So this is actually what they're going to use to keep people from. They're going to use this jump. So it's going to jump from the news and this linear approach towards control and focus and energy. They're going to jump from this to this total, because they have to sell in religion. They got to sell in the new medical sort of thing. So this is why all the medical marijuana is coming out. This is why all the people were talking about mushrooms for depression, like all this stuff that has already been understood and recognized by the indigenous people here is being co-opted by this control grid, this artificial news, this artificial information to stop the storyline, like they've been doing with everything else. They just take the energy, take the culture, take the music, take the frequencies of these original peoples, take the land literally, and then just shut everything down and then move on. They just make their jump to that next step. And that's what this whole like artificial awakening, this whole cookie cutter consciousness understanding of like it's just love and light, we just need to move on, and forgiveness and compassion and da 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 da. He is like, yeah, okay, that's one world, that's not everything. You gotta see how far this stuff has gone back, like the Zoot Suit riots, all the stuff that happened in civil rights, the enslavement of the African people, the enslavement of the indigenous people all over the planet, the destroying of the planet. They're going to try to ball it all up into this one thing, like, oh, okay, we did bad things. Like, it's all about global warming now. We need to fix the globe. That's what global warming is all about. It's just like focus on the globe, and how jacked up everything is. That's why Hermione and Leonardo DiCaprio are going to the UN and to talk about, global, so-called global problems that are going on. So we don't look at the focus of like literally what has happened here, like what's gone on. Like this is still happening today. People were just expressing their culture, expressing themselves, and then a group of individuals within this supremacy program were literally killing people because of that, because of their cultural expression that was originally fine without having to adjust to this system that has been created on top of stolen land. And that's why I keep going back to this, is because even within the flat earth community, if you're only talking about if you're only talking about what the powers that be are going to do, you're going to be subject to whatever their next move is. Like you're already there. So if you don't create a series of just like moves that are basically understood and that are obvious to the collective, that we could do without having to wait on anything, if we don't come up with that space, then we're going to be starting out on like one leg. So there's some really intelligent people that are figuring out this information, this group of people who are waking up, truly waking up outside of the new age the new age version of waking up. There's a natural organic awakening that is happening on these various layers of conspiracy theories and all that. However you want to separate people. People are starting to see beyond the veil, and if you can utilize that energy to not just see your reality, but and unveil the reality, but to actually engage in your reality and utilize that energy, because this energy is basically, like this definition says, in physics, energy is a property of objects which can be transferred to other objects, and that's what's happened to us, or converted into different forms. We've had energy that has been transferred to us, and then our energy has been transferred to systems and individuals and formats and designs, and it's all because our focus has been subverted from the news to categorize our reality based upon an artificial version of this earth plane that we live on, this perspective of humanity. Like, look at this. This is the original Barbie that came out, and this is one of the biggest programs that are out there to keep the divine feminine locked down, of all races, of all cultures, of all everything. It's not just about it's not just about how this stuff works against the energies of the divine feminine. It's about how the energies of these programs and the energies of the feminine output, the feminine involvement in this system, because we're in a patriarchal program right now. So the divine feminine has been completely shut down. So that means these are the programs that shut it down. But what are the programs that activate once it's not shut down? See, when we wait on a system to make a move based upon what the broken system has been perpetrating over the years, then you're working from a broken foundation, and you're playing a game, you're playing a video game that has been designed for you to play. And this is the way. So that's how they lock down the women, the women in the divine feminine, with fashion, egotistical, like focus on the body. It's only about, the only power you can get is from showing your ass and showing cleavage and doing all this stuff, and that whole co-opted women's empowerment about free the boobs and all this stuff. Like, it's totally based on the physical reality. It has nothing to do with the essence and the spirit of the divine feminine. It's all about responding and reacting to this broken system. And it's rooted in something that came out like in 1959 of the original Barbie doll, and the self-hatred that happens by this existing the way this exists. Not to mention the coding that is all within this whole design. But like, literally, people are doing plastic surgeries to be more like Barbie, to be like this whole thing, that you are a divine human being. And we are turning ourselves into plastic expressions of ourselves. And then the guys are locked into either the provide mode of the hustle mentality. Gotta go to work. All I gotta do is provide for my kids, make sure I got this, make sure I can do this, make sure my car is clean, make sure my kicks are clean, make sure my my woman is, she's taken care of, make sure all this stuff that is based in this artificial reality is, taken care of. And even in this, it's about the domination of the feminine. It's about the locking down of, and the plasticizing, I guess, of the design, because this is all plastic. This is all a show. It's a big car show. So they got the guys with the cars and the jobs and success, the American dream, the television shows, all this stuff. Social media just perpetrates all this stuff. Women are locked down with their power comes from, in this world, comes from the physical space of sexual dominance. So this is the solar plexus. This is why it's a patriarchal system right now. The solar plexus, the willpower, the energy centers, is amplified. The ego, the artificial ego, is amplified for the divine masculine. The divine feminine is amplified within the sacral chakra. So the sacral chakra is taken and flipped upside down and backwards and ran in a way that's focused on the artificial design. The video games are locking down all the energy cycles, all the energy constructs of the kids, and basically the root chakra. So it's like the root chakra for the kids, sacral chakra for the feminine, and solar plexus chakra for the men. And this is literally what is happening to our children. Is it's being sucked in. We're being sucked in by this plastic version of reality at Grand Theft Auto. So what I was showing you with even the car shows and all that stuff, they do the same thing with the women inside these video games. And the video games are also locking people into the globe model itself, the whole program of uprooting your system, separating people from the bleeds and the breathing, and the opposite of that, like how much we could do when we are breathing correctly, collectively breathing, collectively not bleeding. So all of these broken systems, and what would happen to fix those broken systems, are just one way to approach a broken reality. And if we approach a broken reality from a broken foundation, then we will create broken outcomes. And we're not broken anymore. The system itself is broken. And we are existing outside of this system, activating and interacting with this system beyond a broken mentality that needs to be broken, which is the globe model. It started out as broken so it can create broken people who will produce broken outcomes, and then that could easily be amplified and kind of herded into a group thought mentality that keeps this space dormant, that keeps these people quiet, that keeps these people just like enslaved even further, and then allows this information stream to take more and more of the land, more and more of the energy, more and more of the focus of the collective consciousness as a whole, and perpetrate more of the fighting that needs to happen on this kind of level, to just keep it all on the level. And the level is not your level. The level is the broken foundation level. So I just kind of wanted to share this whole construct as how I was seeing it, and how entire individuals, entire personalities are based upon like artificiality. Like, people wake up in the morning and just talk about nothing. They talk about money, talk about cars, talk about fashion, talk about just nothingness forever. Like, it's empty. It's totally empty. And these so-called powers that be they're empty themselves, and they don't have any power. Even me referencing them as so-called powers that be, it gives them too much power, because it's empty as a whole. This whole space is non-existent. This whole reality of the that has led up to today is based upon enslavement and blood and lies. And they're going to like try to jump, like it's try to jump straight into the real from the artificial, and hope that people buy it. And that's what this artificial awakening is about, and that's what the thing is about. But I wanted to make this video as a focus to remember like how far back this stuff goes. So the globe model started at a certain time. The bleeding started at a certain time. The heavy bleeding, the heavy suffocating of the people. This stuff started at a certain time. And if we jump straight into what is being sold to us as the next step, then we'll be in that next box of enslavement, and we'll be missing the entire point of this whole program and what has happened today. And so if we start making the changes that take into account the people, the bleeding, the suffocating beforehand, before technology, before politics, before the news, all this other stuff, all while being very aware of it, then we'll be making the right steps outside of the orchestrated steps of controllers. So I just kind of just wanted to have like a little rant about focus and energy and peoples and the origins, and how far we're talking about change, and like what we're dealing with here, because the indigenous people are the majority of this planet. People forget that because of how bright this program is in our face, with the news, with television, with all this stuff out there. People forget that the indigenous people, these people are in those suits going to that American dream job, that everywhere. Like, this is the original, the real people, the real essence, the real connections, the roots that are still holding the space for this to take effect. Like, the only way we would have been able to get to the space that we are today is if these people were holding that ground, anchoring that energy to begin with. So if we want to call ourselves awakening and going into this new age and everything, and we're not recognizing these people first before anything else moves, before anything else happens, and the technological whatever CERN and all that other shit, and this fake NASA stuff, even if you're not even hip to the flat earth stuff, like and only talking about like transhumanism and everything, then you can't look beyond. I mean, you can't just not look at this right now. This is the fake university system monkey evolution idea of merging humanity with technology is ridiculous, and it's totally bogus when you really look at the people, look in the eyes of the original people here, like look in the eyes of the people of what's happened, like the land that has been stolen, the stories that have existed well before Christopher Columbus took sail, where well before the globe model was even put out in the first, newspapers and systems like that. We have to take into account the order of approach, and really take a step back and see how far back this goes, how much this storyline, how much this affects us, how much it affects, and who us is. Yeah, like who when we talk about us and we and all this, like who are you talking about? Like we the people and all this, okay. Who are we talking about? So I'll leave it there, and thank you for joining me. Till next time, peace, love, and harmony.